Whether it's a sandcastle like that one, or if the Midwesterner in you prefers the perfect snowman, after a few hours of building those things up, all it takes is a few seconds to break it down. Now hold on to that thought as we go throughout service today. Well, welcome to the Ridge Community Church Online. My name is John, and I'm one of the pastors on staff here at the Ridge. And thanks for joining us today as we continue a series that we've called Permission to Deconstruct. Now, during this series, we are acting like the kids with those sandcastles, only with faith. See, we're acknowledging that we have some questions about our faith, and we're not ignoring those questions. But instead, we're using those questions to bust up the lies or the half-truths that we have about Jesus. Now, unlike those kids, we're not leaving them in a pile of sand. Instead, we're learning together how to reconstruct a vibrant faith in Jesus. Now, if you're new and checking out The Ridge, I want to invite you to catch up on our YouTube channel so that you don't miss all the really helpful stuff that we've already talked about during this series. But you can do that later because we have an awesome service ready for you today. See, in just a moment, I'm going to turn it over to one of our teaching pastors who's going to talk about one of the biggest questions that we can have when it comes to deconstructing our faith. And then later on, our band is going to lead us in some time of singing to God together. Now, we sing because we know that it helps us connect with God. But in the meantime, let's continue Permission to Deconstruct.
Well, hey, if you are anything like me, some decisions in your life you've made with your head and some you have made with your heart. And if your family is anything like my family, there's probably one of you who is more the head person and one more the heart person when it comes to making decisions. So what you are about to see is the one teeny tiny sliver of an iota of a moment that my husband, the head decision maker, lost all rational thought and gave into the heart of the rest of our family. This is what it looked like in October 2020. What do you think Dad brought home?
I have no idea.
It's in the corner, back over here, underneath the blanket. What do you think?
A puppy! It's a puppy! Let's go! It's a puppy! Let's go!
Are you excited?
Yeah! We need a puppy! It's a puppy! It's a puppy! Can I let it out of its cage?
Yeah. It's a
Can I pet
girl.
her?
Her name is Marvel.
Hi, Marvel. Hi.
She's a little scared because she's not used to being ours yet. So you're going to have to help her, okay?
Here, Madeline.
Do you think she's fluffy?
Are we gonna keep her?
Yeah.
Are you
Forever and
excited?
ever?
Huh?
Forever and ever?
Yeah. Be gentle.
Oh, doggy. So cute.
Why don't you guys turn around and smile at Mom?
All the feels, right? All the feels all at once. See, here's the thing. If our brains would have kicked in for one iota of 1 piece of 1 second, we would have realized that teeny tiny fur ball would become 60 pounds of garbage eating, counter surfing, Amazon driver barking, bad leash walking madness. What were we thinking? We weren't. Because when you see her with the kids, all the feels. See, sometimes our hearts, they cut off rational thought. And it doesn't just happen with the warm fuzzies of life either. And I hate to kind of jump right at you and go there, but some of you are living through this and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because listen, you worked for months or even years for that financial deal and it fell through and you are still furious, right? Or others of you, man, you had someone you care about hear the word cancer. Or you've devoted your life to this partner that you love to the depth of your soul, and they looked you in the eye and they told you they don't love you anymore. Or years and years and years ago, somebody mistreated you, but the wounds are as fresh as they have ever been. See, our hearts speak really, really loudly in those moments. And there are other moments in our life where our heads, they speak loudly too, and we feel this tension oftentimes when we see injustice in the world. This is the stuff that you see happening and you just can't make sense of it. I'm talking about race-related violence, or kids getting shot and killed at school, or people dying of preventable diseases. I mean, you look at this and you just go, it doesn't make any sense. So at some point in your life, I'm willing to bet either your head or your heart, or maybe both, have kind of just thrown their hands up and gone like, where is God in all of this? Here's the thing, when it comes to pain and suffering, it rarely makes sense to your head or your heart, right? And throughout history, that is why this is really the biggest question any of us ever ask when it comes to deconstructing our faith. I mean, what kind of loving God would allow pain and suffering in this world? I mean, if God really did exist, surely he would show up and he would do something. Well, today we're going to go there. We're going to talk about pain and suffering as we continue this series we're doing called Permission to Deconstruct. But listen, while we go there, this isn't going to be 30 minutes of pure sadness, so I don't want you mentally checking out on me right away, okay? Because God's real response to pain and suffering is something that I think should draw you closer to a more intimate relationship with him. And I think it should give you hope to leave here in a way that you never thought you would. All right, so what I want you to do is have permission to deconstruct, but to do it in a healthy way that can help you deepen your faith and not lose it. And for our purposes, let's get real clear right away. This is how we're going to define the term deconstruct. We've been using this all throughout our series. It's the process of examining, questioning, and extreme cases, even rejecting your faith. And when I see that word reject as a pastor, all these little red flags start shooting off in my brain, right? Because culture is going to tell you to beat down your faith until there is nothing left. That is why the term ex-Christian has 1.2 billion views on TikTok. Not kidding. You need somebody who's going to step in and tell you something different. And here at the Ridge, we don't think God is scared of hard questions. We actually think this is a normal part of most of our processes in our faith journey. And this whole series, the point of it is to normalize working through the tough stuff. And when we do the work to reconstruct what we've broken down, we oftentimes walk away with a deeper and richer faith, a closer relationship to God, and we understand him in ways that we didn't expect when we start the process. That is what I want for you today. So as I was preparing for our time together, I couldn't shake this weird feeling like I'd somehow worked through this all mentally before. And I'm like, what is it that I'm trying to think of? And then it kind of all hit me thanks to back to school season. Does anybody else besides me remember these? Okay, I just triggered love-hate relationships for a lot of you. Okay, good, you're on track with me. Okay, this is what math looked like when I was in elementary school. And here's the thing, we'd get, I feel like, one of these per day, and we got drilled on knowing the right answers. You had to give the right answer as fast as you could and then flip your paper over, and if you didn't get them, you had to go over it again to get the right answers. But man, I'm telling you, math has changed. Because I have two kids who are in elementary school now, and the math that they do, it's just totally wild and different. I mean, they love math, they're good at it, which kind of blows my mind to begin with. But they think it's fascinating because they can tell me all the different ways they can use to get to the same answer for just one equation. It's fascinating. They literally have points knocked off of their test now if they don't show multiple ways to get to the right answer. I've come to love and appreciate this style of learning because these kids, they don't learn the right answer one fact at a time. They learn concepts that they can blanketly apply to any equation that the teacher throws at them. It's fascinating stuff. And look again at what that math worksheet says, the new one. This type of thinking helps us see connections we may otherwise miss. Interesting. Because I think when it comes to pain and suffering, look, there is no way I could give you the right answer to every question you're going to have by the time we leave today. But what we want to do is learn some concepts, one for our head and one for our heart, that you can blanketly apply to how you're dealing with pain and suffering in your head and in your heart. All right, that's what we're going to do. You ready? We're going to deal with one question for your head and one for your heart. First up is the head question. Here it is. Why do pain and suffering exist? This is kind of like the biggie, right? The elephant in the room. Well, to be blunt, they weren't in God's original game plan. They just weren't. Now, if you're a Christian or not, you've probably heard at least the basics of the creation story, right? God takes a week, he makes everything, the heavens and the earth, and he kind of sits back and relaxes when he's all done, and he says, God saw what he made, and he declared it very good. Not kind of good, not mostly good, not partially good. It was all very good. What's missing? No pain, no suffering, no heartache, no tragedy, no Bears fans. Good. It was all complete, and it was very good. So what happened? Quite literally, all hell broke loose. Adam and Eve, they're in the garden, and they decide that they can run their lives better without God than with him. They pick a piece of fruit off of the one forbidden tree, and in a moment, everything changes. Sin enters the world. And if you've never heard the real definition of sin, because culture tosses all sorts of things around, all sin means is missing God's mark. And so in an instant, they are missing God's mark, and we are now in a world that is impacted by the fact that it now misses God's mark too. Everything changes. So sin comes into the world, and with it come its ramifications, pain and suffering. And I get it that this isn't an easy thing to hear. It's not an easy topic to talk about. But you have to remember, pain and suffering were not in God's original game plan. So where did they come from if they weren't his? Well, they came from a few different places. We're going to list off 4 together right now. But again, some of these aren't easy to hear, so just hang on with me, okay? The first place they come from is our own bad choices and sin. Because listen, if you drink or you gamble or you abuse prescription drugs or pornography, hear me, this is hard, but it is true. The consequences of your bad choices and your sin have nothing to do with God, right? That's you paying the price for something foolish that you did. He's not coming after you to punish you. Scripture puts it pretty simply. They sow the wind and they reap the whirlwind, kind of like a tornado effect, right? If you put your time and effort and you invest in stuff that's temporary and of this world, can be blown around at a moment's notice, you're going to reap the results of that kind of behavior. Now, some of you, you're a step ahead of me as you process all of this already, because your life has been full of pain and suffering, and you had nothing to do with it. And you know what? You are right. Because the second place that pain and suffering can come from are the bad choices and the sins of other people. A drunk driver kills somebody that you love, or your parents split up after an affair, or somebody doesn't protect and love you like they should during your childhood. And just listen, okay? There are people sitting in the seats in this room right now and in the seats at Oak Creek Franklin or watching online right now. And some of you have shared pieces of your story with me and the other pastors on the staff team here. And you have lived through things that I wouldn't wish my worst enemy to have a nightmare about. But you need somebody to look at you and tell you are still standing. And you didn't ask for it, but it matters to us that you are here. This church needs you, and this world needs you. And it isn't fair. But you are completely correct in thinking that the sin of somebody else has leaked out sideways onto you. And you are suffering the consequences of that reality. Now, pain and suffering are also the result of a broken and a sinful world. And notice the nuances here. Because when sin, boom, enters the world, it enters the whole world. It doesn't come just to one neighborhood or even one continent. It is global, right? That means the death and the sickness and the natural disaster and the accidents that happen because of it, those happen everywhere too. And this is the stuff that your head really really has a hard time processing, because we're looking to fight injustice. We're looking for the fair answer. And that doesn't happen here because it isn't something that you can blame on just one person. It is the consequence of global sin. And in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus describes that like this: for he gives his sunlight to both the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the just and the unjust alike. And it can feel like lunacy, quite frankly, because in our gut, we're just fighting for things to be fair. We're going to get to more on that in just a second. But before we do, I want to make sure we hit that fourth place that pain and suffering come from. And that's this: they are sometimes the result of spiritual warfare. And I'm treading a little bit lightly as I say that, because this one gets way overused for weird reasons. Okay, if you never get your car's oil changed and you break down on I-94, that is not the devil coming for you, that is you being irresponsible. If you spout off your mouth at your spouse and you end up in the doghouse, the devil didn't make you say that, you are being insensitive. Okay, got it. That is different than the fact that we do have a real enemy. And Jesus knew this too. He said, the enemy comes to seek to steal, kill, and destroy. Those are dramatic words, powerful words from our King. We should be paying attention to them. Spiritual warfare is a real thing. And I'm telling you, man, there are more times than I can even count in my 8 years on staff here at the Ridge that we sense God's going to do something in a service on any given weekend, and we can feel it coming. Or we know that we're going to see life change through baptism happening. And those, without a doubt, are always the weekends that stuff happens. We have the most tech glitches. Volunteers get sick. People's cars break down. And am I surprised by like any of it? No, I'm not. In fact, many times, we start praying days ahead of time for God to protect us, for him to protect all of you, because we feel this vulnerability coming. Why? Because we are up against a real opponent whose sole purpose is to try to ensure that people do not form a connection with Jesus to feel what a life experiencing the hope that he can bring would mean, or to destroy a relationship between you and God. See, the enemy wants to convince us sin's not a big deal. What you're doing, it's not that dangerous, or nobody's ever going to find out. You'll be fine. Keep it to yourself. That isn't reality, and our guardrails need to be firm and high because the enemy is real. Like I said, this stuff is not easy to hear, but your head wants to know why. Why do pain and suffering exist? Well, this is why our own bad choices and sin, others' bad choices and sin, a broken and sinful world, and the result of spiritual warfare. Great, so now you know the right answer. But if knowing the right answer leaves your head still spinning and your heart still hurting, welcome to the club. Because see, I think you can fight against this stuff your whole life and never really truly win. Because remember, pain and suffering were not in God's original game plan. It's not supposed to feel good to know this kind of answer. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that doesn't just bring you to your knees, it wrecks you from the inside out. And if you've lived it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I got to see this up close and personal a few years ago. And I'm just going to warn you right up front, this is not an easy story to hear. But I got to watch a mom do whatever it took to ensure that her daughter's killer would pay for his crimes. And this is really just a worst case scenario, all wrapped into one family story. But this little girl, Samantha, was 5 years old. And she was playing like kids do in front of her family's condo in the yard with her best friend, when a complete stranger pulled up and randomly picks her and drives off. And throughout this man's trial, we come to learn that not only was she kidnapped, but she was sexually assaulted and then strangled. And her DNA was found in his car. And his DNA was found under her fingernails. And every day, I would see this woman walk into the courtroom, and she'd sit 2 rows behind the monster that just ripped her life apart. And I wanted her to yell, or I wanted her to break down, or I wanted her to lunge at him. I wanted anything, and I didn't get it. Not one time. And finally, when he's convicted and the guilty verdict comes in, I talked to her a few minutes after that happened. I don't know what I was expecting to hear. I don't. But whatever it was, I didn't get it, because there was no celebration moment. There was relief, for sure. There was relief. And I wasn't a parent then. I'm obviously a parent now, and I can just tell you I get it now. There's no celebration because you can't change the results of the sin and the evil. And to this day, I can't wrap my mind around it. I can't make sense of it. And it's why I don't think the answer to our first question is a complete answer. I think we need to keep going and ask another one today. And this one is a question for our hearts. And my hope is that the answer to this question is really going to be a perspective changer for all of us. So here it is. This is the heart question. What's God's response? Because see, if I have to live in a world where pain and suffering exist, God, if I've got to live in a world where little girls can be killed, then I got to know what you have to say about it. And God, I need it to be a really good answer, because otherwise I'm going to deconstruct and I'm going to have nothing left from the rubble to build back again, and I'm going to be gone. So God, you got to tell me, what is your response? And this is what he says. I won't make you love me. Did you catch that? He doesn't give us a head response, he gives us a heart response. Ugh. See, the God of the universe, the God who made you and he made me and he made everything, he wants a real relationship with you. And he knows if it's forced, it ain't real. If it's mandated, it's not real. If he programs you like he programmed ChatGPT, it's not going to be real. He wants a true relationship with you. But when he gives us the freedom to run toward him, we also have the freedom to run away. And man, do we live in a world that has the sin and the consequences of running. There's a scripture in Galatians, that says it like this: the one who sows to please his sinful nature, from that nature will reap destruction. I think it's safe to say we hate it when others use their freedom to somehow create this destruction that impacts us. I don't think it's just us that hate it. God hates it too. And so just click up a few notches with me just for a moment. I want you to, as I set up this next scenario, pretend you are God. Okay, try to see things from his perspective. All right, so let me set the scene. Okay, you're the God of the universe, and you don't have to, but you want to. So you decide to make this masterpiece. And you're pretty pumped about it, so pumped that you are going to be really intentional and do everything you do with great purpose. So you come up with some great stuff. I mean, the way the stars shine, the way the spray of the ocean smells when you're at the beach, baby fat rolls, man, you take credit for that all day long. You even make the platypus. What the heck was that about? You guys are super creative as God, let me tell you, right? And you get done and you declare all of it very good. You're pleased with yourself. And then when you're done, the humans, the crown jewel of your creation, the piece of your creation that you say is closest to you, made in your own image, that's the piece that goes wrong. And you know the instant that it does, there is only one way to fix it. And so God does respond. And his response to pain and suffering, it's not a what or a why. His response is a who. God sends his one and only son to go through all of the same stuff that we go through. He is sinned against, He faces the consequences of evil being in this world. Man, the devil comes after him, that's for sure. And he's done nothing, not one thing, not one sin ever to deserve any of it. And before his moment on the cross even happens, God knows what's coming. And Jesus knows how it's going to end too. This is what he says to his followers. In this world, you will have trouble. It's a guarantee. This place is a messy, broken place. But take heart. He wants this piece of you to pay attention and be awake to hear his answer. I have overcome the world. It's not if I win, I've already won. And in fact, I've come to you to bring heaven right here and right now. And as his followers, even today, we're part of fulfilling this promise to the rest of the world. We get to step in and take action to bring more of him to the world and the people around us. That's a powerful thing. And he doesn't end there. He promises a new day. The book of Revelation talks about it this way. He will wipe every tear from their eye. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. These are great and powerful reminders. And I think God gives us so many of them because he knows we're going to need them. This is the hardest question that we are ever going to ask. It's hard because what the head understands, man, the heart doesn't feel. And I think the depth of the pain that we can experience as human beings, it just can't accurately be described. But the promise of a new day can be. And so I need you to remember that God sent his son for you. Your very personal pain. It got the most personal response that God could ever give. That's what separates Christianity from every other faith. So let me ask you this. Are you willing to let him do what only he can do? Are you willing to let the God who loves you so personally and so intimately into the pain that you just can't seem to let go of? Because what I have learned is that when your head and your heart get done deconstructing and reconstructing, at the end of the day, you're still left with one thing that you got to face. A God small enough to be understood isn't big enough to be worshiped. I mean, like, really sit with that and let that sink in. A God small enough for you to understand isn't big enough to be worshiped. You know, some of his answers, they're not going to make sense. We're not God. That doesn't mean he doesn't want to help heal your heart. He does. And you know, before we leave, I want to give all of us a chance to just take a step in his direction. So we're going to go through a few things together. Don't worry, you don't need to know what's coming. I'm just going to have you be in the moment and pay attention, and we'll take you right through. But the first thing I want us to do is just talk to him together. So would you just take a posture of prayer, whatever that might look like for you. Now, some of you, you're just going to close your eyes. Some of you, you might bow your heads or put your hands in your lap. Some of you might bend over at the waist, whatever you want to do. Let's just come to our God together. Heavenly Father, thank you for seeing us. God, right now, for some of us, we just have all these thoughts swirling through our minds. For some of us, the pain is so real that our hearts are racing and our breath is rapid. God, would you just use your supernatural power to slow our pace? God, would you just open up the ability to just connect with you and rest in you? God, for some of us, we're afraid to deal with the pain because we know all the emotions that are going to come with it. So we push you away or we push the pain away. God, some of us, we lock it in this little box and we shove it way, way down deep. Through your grace, would you crack it open? Would you take the lid off? And God, we don't want to feel the emotions. We want to run from them. would you just make this a safe place? God, would you just affirm for us that whatever those emotions are, you can be with us. You're in that. God, the anger and the bitterness and the sadness and the resentment and the fury and the rage, God, you're in all of it. And as those hit us in waves, God, whatever the emotion, just remind us that you can handle it. You're not running from us. God, help us commit right now to letting you rest in it with us. God, let us feel your comfort. God, bring us your peace. God, to those here who need a declaration over them, let them realize he created you. He loves you. He's with you. God, somebody needs to hear your truth. He created you, and he loves you. And he is with even you, even right now. God, in the bigness of our pain, help us to be grateful that you see us personally. Help us to be grateful for your personal response. Help us to accept the love of your Son. Help us to have the strength to keep coming back to you. Amen. Just stay right here. Don't move. Just stay right here. Just continue this posture of prayer, as two things are going to happen. The first is that some of you are going to keep doing business with God, just right at your seat. But others of you, you're experiencing something that is just called the groanings of your heart. And for you, your pain is so deep and so real, you don't have the words. So your heart is just aching and you don't know how to express it, but we want to wade into it and serve you and be here with you and for you. So even right now, we're going to ask you to stand up here and in Oak Creek, Franklin, and you can start moving to the sides of your room where you're going to see some prayer team members. They've got lanyards on. They'll be easy to spot. And they're going to listen to the groanings of your heart. And my prayer for you is in your courage as you get up and you start to move toward them is just the simple idea that you could hear God speak to you through their voices. You don't have to carry this alone. That's not the kind of church you're at. That's not the kind of God you love. We do life together. And they are willing and ready to hear the groanings of your heart and to pray with you and for you. And for the rest of us, we're going to continue with this posture of prayer, but we're going to do it through music. And so I'm going to ask you to stand as our band comes here, and at Oak Creek Franklin, our band's going to come as well. And they're going to lead us in a song, and the lyrics of this song, man, this was picked intentionally to declare the truth of God over you and to help you remember as you leave how close he is to you and how personally he loves you. We're going to have our band lead us.
Oh, your mercy never fails me, and all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful, and so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in the darkest night. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. Oh, I have lived in the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Yeah. And all my life you have been faithful. Yes, you have. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
For those of you who are new with us, one of the phrases that you will hear a lot is our vision, to bring the hope of Jesus into every home. This is what gets us motivated and it gets us really excited. We just want every home to really experience the life-changing hope that Jesus offers. Now, as a church, we know that this is happening when we get to celebrate people taking the step to publicly express their decision to follow Jesus. And how do they do that? Through baptism. See, baptism is this perfect symbol of someone experiencing this hope. Going under the water symbolizes Jesus' death to pay for their sins, and then coming out of the water is this picture of them receiving the new life that Jesus gave them when he defeated sin and death and came back to life. A couple of years ago, Tyler took this step to get baptized here at the Ridge. Now here's what Tyler said when he got baptized. I was raised in a denominational church, but became sort of disconnected from the church during my college years. Shortly after graduating, I decided to pursue a relationship with God more closely and try to find a church home. I had driven past the Ridge tons of times and decided to check it out. I very quickly knew that I was in the right place and have been attending ever since, as well as joining the tech team and also a small group. Since then, I've been more focused on my faith life and my relationship with Jesus, and I've been more intentional about being his follower. See, Tyler went public with his decision to follow Jesus, and he's continuing to follow him and make a difference in the lives of others around him. Now, as Tyler mentioned, he continues to serve on the tech team. He plays a huge role in helping people participate in our weekend services. And that Ridge group he mentioned is now one he's leading with his wife, Anna. God wants you to experience this same type of hope too. And there is no better opportunity for you to take this step and get baptized than this October. To sign up, head to the website that you see on the screen. And if you're a follower of Jesus and you haven't taken this step, then this is the step for you to take. We're going to transition into a moment of offering. And this is the time of service where we get to consider and take a moment and take a little consideration of what God has given us and then honor him with our finances. Like baptism, this is a step of trust in Jesus. He's entrusted us with resources and we give back as a way of acknowledging that. The best way that you can do this is by following the link that you see on the screen. We'll take this moment, do it together, and then I'll be right back. Thanks for joining us for service today. If you haven't signed up for baptism yet, I want to encourage you to take a second and do that right now. And as you're doing that, let me give you a heads up that next week we will be looking at one other big reason that people are walking away from Jesus. Now, in the meantime, may the hope of Jesus be in your home as you bring it to the homes of those around you.